What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to another episode of Tradin Jabs. Joining me this week is NHL draft and prospect analyst for Daily Faceoff and Hockey Sense, Chris Peters. Chris, thanks for joining the show.
Jack, it's always great to be with you. I love talking hockey with you, and the Kings always seem to have a lot of young guys to talk about, so it's fun for me to do it.
Yeah, they've accumulated quite the young core in the last 4 or 5 years, and finally we're getting into that area where they're becoming a little bit more relevant, and they're in Kings uniforms. But as I mentioned, your expertise lies in NHL draft and prospect rankings and analysis. It's a little too soon for us to talk about the draft. I know you're probably already deep into the 2022 draft analysis, but we'll get to you in the summer. For now, let's talk prospects. And the Kings, we'll start there. They've obviously been quite depleted with the injury bug over the last month and change. Your take and your assessment on some of the young guys that have come up and started to make an impact so far?
Yeah, I've certainly been impressed, and it's good to have young guys being able to contribute on their entry level deals and finding ways to help a team that's in a playoff hunt. I mean, this is great experience for them, regardless of what happens down the stretch and how much they play, and just getting opportunities like this is pretty great. And certainly, I think all eyes were on Quinton Byfield and what was he going to be able to bring to the table? And this is, we're seeing a player that's still a work in progress very much. And that's not a bad thing for a guy that was picked second overall. And, it's always been about the raw tools and just being able to put it all together at the right time. And we're still, waiting to see that completely. But I think the little glimpses that you get to see in the NHL, the power moves to the net, the ability to get inside, the ability to play on both sides of the puck, and those are all starting to come together. So that's been huge. So obviously Byfield's a big focus for me as somebody that was high up on the draft. But then you look at some of the guys that were taken lower and in later rounds. You look at Jordan Spence and the growth that he's shown as a professional. I mean, not just with the Kings, but also at the AHL level. I mean, the numbers he put up were sensational. And now he's showing with the Kings, that was legit. This is a guy that's getting to a point in his young career, probably faster than anybody thought, that he can actually be a significant player down the stretch here, and he provides something that the Kings maybe didn't have on the back end, or didn't have as much. But that doesn't make me want to, I don't want to skip over Sean Durzi though, because look at what he's done this year.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's been an incredible young defenseman, again, a contributing player. Even if he's not in the Rookie of the Year race, he's in the race to be one of the best rookies on his current team, if he isn't already. And he's making a significant impact in that way. And, I could go on and on, but if I'll answer them all, because these guys have been following him for years, and just to be able to see it, when you get to see these guys make it to the NHL and actually have an impact, that's really fun, especially on a team that's, playing as well as the Kings have played throughout this season.
Yeah, and you touched on quite a few things there, and I think we'll dig into some of those players specifically. But the injury bug, it obviously hit the Kings, as we've talked about, and in one way, it really is beneficial because it gives a lot of these young guys NHL experience ahead of schedule. And I think the first thing that we'll focus on here is the offense in terms of that third line that sits right now, and as Jim Fox has alluded to as the champagne line, because they've all been picked early, in Kupari, Quinton Byfield, and Gabe Vilardi. Now you're looking at the wings; they're all centers, and obviously that can't last. So you've got 3 guys that have played center, and 2 of them have moved to the wing, and we've seen great progress in their games. What have you made of that line as a whole, but specifically the journeys that all 3 have kind of gone through over this course of the year, and now have gotten to being a third line NHL team that's starting to put some impactful points on the board?
Yeah, I think it's guys that are finding ways to create a role for themselves, whether it's Vilardi or Kupari. They each have different skill sets, and it all makes them work together well. You've got a lot of speed on that line with Kupari, and certainly Quinton Byfield can really get it moving. And then Vilardi can be kind of more of a cerebral player, and he can make some of those plays. And then he's also, got a good size to him that he uses to his advantage, and strength really as well. And I think that helps you when you can have that scoring depth, and when the third line can be such an important line for any team, because it does provide that secondary scoring, but it also gives you important shifts to allow the other, the top lines to not have so much burden put on them. Yeah. So, I would say that's a group there where it's still very early for all of them. You might not see necessarily the numbers being as dramatically high as, you would like at this point, but at the same time, they're all creating something and they're finding ways to play different roles, because, especially in Kupari and Velarde's cases, not everybody can be in the top six, right? And even not every center can be a center at this point in their careers. Yeah. And maybe they will be, but maybe they settle into the wing a little bit more. And I mean, the same goes for Byfield. You always are trying to constantly evaluate, but I think for those guys to be able to play together and to be maybe able to grow up together a little bit in the NHL, and beyond. I mean, just seeing where they can go from here, really really important for them to get that kind of opportunity and to do well with it as they have so far.
I'm curious to get your response to this next question. And you've been so in depth with detail in terms of your draft analysis, and we go back to 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22 with all these guys being drafted. In terms of your original analysis of some of these guys that have been drafted, and we'll focus on those three specifically right now, how have they evolved differently or projected from where you thought that they would end up when they were drafted by the Kings originally?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Velarde, it's obviously been a complete roller coaster for him with the injuries and the not being able to play. So, I think that he was always a guy that I felt I underrated for a long period of time. And that, the evidence that we saw when he was healthy was a guy that could make a much bigger impact on a team. And I still believe that that's possible. And, I think Kupari, we always knew that there was the speed, the skill. I think what he's grown in his game over these last few years is that physical strength, not being able to, not being pushed off the puck so easily. That he's not just a skill player, that he can be a two-way guy, that he can be, somebody that contributes in a lot of different ways. I think in Byfield, that story is still yet to be written in terms of, but you see, like, as I mentioned before, just, those little pops where you see him be that power forward that he can potentially be long-term. You just see, and if you weren't seeing glimpses of that, you'd be concerned. But when you see, okay, well, now it's just a matter of getting consistency, and that comes with experience. So, I think that they're all very on a very similar track. I think Velarde has kind of, his timeline has fluctuated, but he's kind of reset himself. Kupari was always one of those guys where it's like, where exactly is this guy going to fit in your lineup? And now he's finding that. I think that, he probably is a long-term middle six player that can give you, good minutes and scoring depth and be able to be used in matchups in various ways like that. So, and then, the hope is that eventually Quinton Byfield can ascend to a number one center position. Maybe that's still, even if that's not a number one center, number two center, I mean, that's still really good. So, I think that again, he's still he's on track for where I think, you would expect somebody like him to be.
Yeah. And, I think it's a great point that you bring up is, with these guys, the experience and them kind of coming up together might be more important than what you're seeing in terms of the stat lines. On the defensive end, all of a sudden we've got, two guys that you've previously mentioned that are lighting up the stats, and that's Jordan Spence and Sean Durzi. I think it's extremely interesting between the two because, in the last year, I think all of a sudden Jordan Spence talk had really escalated. And then Sean Durzi on the other end was someone that we weren't talking about a whole lot, a big time sleeper. He gets an opportunity, and we'll start with Sean. Someone who's really become a character player within the locker room, but mature beyond his years, and he's kind of showing that this isn't just a one-trick pony, and he's able to kind of handle his way and be impactful on the ice in many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think that the maturity had to come before he could be this player. I don't think it was always, it certainly didn't, it wasn't necessarily evident in his game at various points in his career, and now you are seeing it. And sometimes I think the NHL almost forces you into this, this new mentality. where first you have to convince yourself that you belong, and then you have to have, it kind of, you have to be a little bit crazy to believe that you can be one of the best players in the world, right? Like it's one of those things where, we say believe in your dreams and all that stuff, but then we're kind of like, man, this kid's never going to make it. But, but for a guy like Sean Dursey, he's constantly been doubted, and he's had to go through adversity in his career. And I think that's built up into what we're seeing now, where he is a guy that can play over 20 minutes a game, can be a top 4 defenseman. If you would have asked me at this point last year, Sean Dursey is going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, I would have said no way. And that's what these players are capable of doing. They find a way to dig in and get whatever they need. They get the experience, and then once they get that opportunity, they take it and run with it. So I think his defending has gotten a lot better. His play off the puck has been really strong. His ability to get pucks up the ice and just, to play the style that you need to play in the NHL now, where it's all about puck movement and speed and getting pucks out of your zone. He can do those things, and he can do them well, and he can do them at a rate that's trusted by the coaching staff. And that's pretty impressive. Now, there's still work to be done. He's not a finished product, and but to see where he has come in 1 year's time is truly remarkable. And a credit to him, but it's also a credit to the way that the Kings have been developing players within the system, because it's one thing to draft them. It's an entirely different thing to develop them. And I think that, a lot of teams that are finding success at the next level have had success first with their AHL team. And it's not necessarily winning the Calder Cup or those types of things. It's just getting to a point where you can be a relied upon player at that level, and then you can move on and graduate. And that, I think, there is a stepping stone in Ontario that is really helpful for the Kings right now, where it's going to make sure that those players, it's a finishing school essentially for so many young guys. Not many teams are that young at the AHL level, but they've proven over these last couple of years that that's a model that can work, and it can create guys like Sean Dursey and give them the tools necessary to move on and get into the NHL.
Yeah, and another player who's gone through that stepping stone and come up, in many ways quicker than expected would be Jordan Spence. And for Jordan, you look at a guy who has been doubted. He was a 4th round draft pick, undersized, but the offense is continuing to show, and it showed in the AHL with almost a point per game through 40 something games. And he's got 4 points in 13 games, I believe, so far. But he's been more of an offensive threat. Pucks are on net. He's able to create a little bit on offense, and you see the puck on his stick a little bit more than your average defenseman. Your assessment on Jordan Spence through 13 games in the NHL after what he's done in the A?
I mean, I think this whole season in the American League was just a constant growth year for him, where he was like, did it at the QMJHL level, and there are lots of guys that put up a lot of points at the QMJHL level. There are a lot of guys that put up a lot of points and don't make it. So this year, proving it at the professional level. Let's keep in mind, Jordan Spence made Canada's World Junior team last year, but he's basically their extra defenseman.
Yep.
And so he's made it to the NHL faster than some of the guys on that team. And and so maybe he should have played more. I mean, they also didn't win the gold medal. So either way, but anyway, I'm just
shots fired.
Shots fired. Sorry, Canada.
Yeah.
But anyway, but to have scored at the rate that he did at the AHL level is so incredible. I mean, as a rookie, to do it in his first year of professional hockey, I say it all the time, especially since I've been in this job. The more AHL games you go see, you get to see how tough that league is to play in. You get to see how hard it is on young players to make that transition, but it wasn't hard for him. And I think that speaks to the fact that he has incredibly high hockey sense. He's got great intelligence. He has incredible, footwork and his puck movement, and everything that he does is at a high pace, and it's with precision. And he does it confidently. So there's no hesitation. There's no, thinking about it. He just has the instincts. I think at the NHL level, that's going to come more. And what we've seen so far from him at the NHL level is, I can do this here too. Maybe not to the same degree of proficiency, but good enough. And I think he still needs to get stronger. He's still going to need to, his download play is still going to have to come along. But if you can show, hey, there is a way for me to make an impact at my size, at my strength level, at my experience level,
at this
which
age,
he's shown at this age, pretty incredible. So I think that he is only on the cusp of what he can be. And we have those of us that do what I do have to recalibrate our expectations for him, because he clearly took a step in the queue, but now he's taken a leap, and you're like, oh, and that happens enough. And it speaks to the development of the players. And a lot of the time, a big jump like that is something the player, decided to do or figured out, or, just was a right place, right time kind of situation. I think the Kings have also done a good job of putting these guys in positions to have some success, where it wasn't all on them. It wasn't all, there are a lot of rebuild scenarios where it's all on the young guys. There's a core in place in LA that already exists. It's won Stanley Cups. I mean, so that's a pretty nice core to work your way into.
Yeah, it's in many ways, it's actually identical to Sean Durzi in terms of being doubted. He undersized, not the biggest guy, and a mid-round draft pick. He goes from QMJ Rookie Defenseman of the Year to Defenseman of the Year to then making Team Canada, scoring in his one game, and moving his way up. And clearly, every time you say, oh, he's a little bit too small, just ask Blake Lizotte. It doesn't matter in size; he's still impactful. Right. Before we move down to the A and some of the guys that are, starting the process of what some of the guys we've talked about have gone through, I do want to touch on Arthur Kaliev. We talk about these prospects, and Arthur Kaliev is kind of just under the radar, playing 70 games. He's got 23 points and a little bit of a sheltered role, but someone who is seemingly fit right into the NHL. He's got a lot of growth to come. Todd has obviously talked about how, in the future, he needs Arthur to start becoming a true threat in goal scoring that can, pump up 30-40 in the future. But your assessment on a guy like Arthur Kaliev, who 70 games into his NHL career?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a huge Arthur Kaliev fan in terms of the way that he plays. I understood why people didn't love him in his draft year, but I also watched him enough times to think, that sometimes he was misunderstood as opposed to, properly evaluated at times. And so the same thing, for him, he is a goal scorer. It is incumbent upon him to get into the spots where you score goals. He shoots off the pass extremely well. He's getting to the net more. He's scoring goals down low. He can get, rebound opportunities. He can get the dirty goals. He's obviously, a big guy that's hard to move. And there, every kind of knock against him has not really held him back at the NHL level. The skating, the lack of detail defensively, the inconsistent work ethic and things of that were kind of dogging him throughout juniors. I haven't seen that at the NHL level. When I watch the Kings play, I notice Kaliev. He has noticeable games. He might not always score the big goal, but he's in there and he's finding ways to impact the game. I think that, in addition to being a great goal scorer, he just has high offensive intelligence, and he has an ability to pick apart an offensive zone. He passes very well. He makes good reads, and so, and I agree. Like, now for him, he's been given 70 games in the NHL this year where he's had an opportunity. You still have to, you're still going to have to shelter him. But as he starts getting that goal scoring prowess, as he starts figuring out, hey, here's where I can score in the NHL, and a guy that can score from distance like him can really score from anywhere once he gets into that rhythm. I think it's going to be a chance for his game to take off. So I think that the Kings have all of these guys that we just talked about, where they're all very good. Not every single one of them is going to be a superstar, but all of them look like guys that, at least at the early stages, and this is very true of Kaliev, have an opportunity to be a pretty significant impact player in the future of this franchise. And that's the dream, right? That's what you hope for when you draft these players. You never really know how it's going to work out, but I mean, it's those guys, and then even more coming in the next wave that will potentially take this organization to the next level. So still more work to be done, still more development ahead. And now these guys have to develop at the NHL level, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do. But I mean, they're on their way. They're all on their way.
Yeah, from a micro perspective, you see Kaliev is a lot like Quentin Byfield in the sense of you see those little spurts of, okay, I can understand why this is someone that is coveted so much. And then obviously from a macro perspective, as you mentioned, a group of guys, I mean, just 5-6 guys that we've talked about, not even touching on the other half of the prospect pool that's also supposed to be in the top 6 and top 4 of the NHL one day. It's looking awfully nice. On the other end, the Kings, if we go back to step 1 of what these guys have gone through, and that's starting with the Ontario Reign. Recently, they've signed 5 guys, 4 of them coming from their draft picks and 1 undrafted free agent. We'll start with him and Taylor Ward. Nebraska Omaha, a guy who averaged over a point per game. Your opinion on the fit in Ontario and what you think he can do when it comes to joining a team like the Ontario Reign?
Yeah, I think based on the signings that the Kings have made out of undrafted free agents over the last few years, your ears perk up a little bit when you hear who they've signed because of guys like Iafallo, guys like Lizotte, and you're like, oh well, okay, this is interesting, right? So but Taylor Ward was the guy that was on my top 10 undrafted free agents list that was on Daily Faceoff, and Taylor, he's a goal scorer, and he was in college. He's a good, is a shooter, but then he's got that size too, and he can get inside. And so far with Ontario, I haven't had a chance to watch his games yet, but I was looking up his stat line. I was like, wow, he's already put up points in the AHL. Great sign. He had his best collegiate season by far this year. I thought he had a chance to sign after last season. I respect the decision to come back because Omaha basically got everybody to come back that was on the radar last year for college free agents and guys that were drafted. They took a run at it. They didn't necessarily get as far as they had hoped. They didn't make the NCAA tournament, but they did all take a step as a program, and Taylor Ward is a huge part of that. So watching what he did in college this year, it makes sense. He's got that size profile. He can play, gritty. He can do a lot of different things. A versatile player indeed. And after the season that he just had, to see that the Kings were interested made a lot of sense.
The next signing for the Ontario Reign and the LA Kings was David Rittich, 5-year starter at St. Cloud, obviously had a phenomenal run. You hate to see the way his season ended with a little bit of an illness that kept him out of the NCAA tournament in his final go. But 146 starts in college, 82 wins. Your opinion on where he slots in with the prospect pool among Villalta, Parikh, and Ingham as well?
Yeah, there were times where, I think Rittich had such an up and down collegiate career, but he really did come alive this year. I thought that, going back to school turned out to be one of the best things that could have happened to him because he really started to play some of his best hockey. He was their best player throughout this season. And unfortunately, St. Cloud didn't have that level of consistency that they necessarily needed. They end up getting bounced in the first round. And what happens if Rittich plays that game? That's what you wonder. But, the fact that basically the Kings didn't have to spend a contract on him for 5 years and allowed him to develop and kind of ride the wave with him. Now you've kind of got, a position. I would say,
you have options.
You have options. The goal, I would say that the goaltending, there's a lot of maybes in that group where, you're not saying, oh, this guy is definitely going to start for us. This guy's definitely our number 2 of the future. Like those, but you have them. And now you have Rittich under contract, which, I think at portions of last season, if he came out last year, I really wonder, like, was there going to be a contract for him? And he's, the Kings didn't go away from him, and he stayed loyal to them. He could have been a free agent, could have signed with any team that he wanted. I'm sure there would have been interest in him outside of the Kings. But this is a guy that has a lot of raw tools. I think he needs refinement. I think he needs time. He needs coaching. He needs a lot more. Not that he didn't have that at St. Cloud, but he just needs more of it.
Yeah.
And we'll just kind of see where he goes as a pro. Sometimes these guys really flourish, and the tools are there. You just wonder, can he be consistent game to game? And that's something we didn't always see in college that we did see more of this year.
Yeah. So Rittich, St. Cloud, Ward, Nebraska Omaha. The third collegiate signing from the LA Kings organization was Andre Lee, 6'2", 205 pounds, 3 years in college at UMass Lowell, led the team in points and goals this year. Power forward, but a lot of skill in his game. Your opinion, your take on a guy like Lee joining the LA Kings organization at this point in his career?
I think anytime you sign one of your draft picks below the 4th round, you're just ecstatic. And to get a guy that
a seventh round draft pick,
a 7th round draft pick. And I just want to go back to 2019 because he had an average USHL season that year, but he had a sensational playoffs. He led his team to the Clark Cup that year with some of the what he was doing out there. They had a really good team in Sioux Falls, a lot of guys that were NHL draft picks, but he was one of their best offensive players. And that's where he started to show, I can be a power forward. I can be a guy that drives the net. I can be versatile. This year, 28 points with Lowell. He had 16 goals. He really came alive. That was not a team that scored regularly or consistently, but he was a constant source for them, a top 6 guy. His future is probably in the bottom 6. His future is a scoring depth guy. He's going to have to find his way. He's probably going to have to play a very tough style of hockey. He's got the size to do it. But to see the momentum that he created over the 3 years that he played at Lowell, which has been a solid program for developing pro prospects. They don't get the top guys. They don't get all the top recruits. Yeah. But they still have guys moving on to the NHL. And I do think that Andre Lee, he has NHL tools. There's no question about it. Now you get him into your own system. He still has a lot of runway. He's only 21 and he's got 3 collegiate seasons under his belt. That's a really good place to start from. So he's got a great foundation of skills. I think he's going to be a guy that, you'll definitely want to keep tabs on because he always sneaks up on you. And you're like, sometimes you forget how big he is. Sometimes you forget, just how much he can score. But then all of a sudden he does something. You're like, whoa, okay, I gotta pay attention to this guy. So a very good player. And I think, obviously a home run for just signing a 7th rounder. You already feel like you won there.
Yeah, no question. Just as you explained in terms of his ability to catch your eye, he did that quite a bit in rookie camp this past season. Another guy who in a similar avenue of a power forward, Samuel Helenius. The Finnish season ends, last year's 2nd round draft pick from the Kings. His numbers in Finland, and I hate bringing up numbers when they play in the Finnish leagues and sometimes the Swedish league because it's such a different style of play. Obviously, he had 48 games and just 9 points, but I don't think that does justice. I think his game and his ability of what he showed was in the 2 games in the World Juniors this past year with 4 points in 2 games as a centerman at 6'6". Someone who I think the Kings are very high on based on what we heard about when they drafted him, and clearly some offenses there as well in terms of being a guy that can just shut you down as well.
Yes, he is a true 2-way center. I love the way he plays defensively. I think that he has great detail. He is tremendous at the faceoff circle. He is a guy that, the length that he has at 6'6" is remarkable, but then he brings it with this very fluid, like his skating motion isn't very heavy. He doesn't seem like he's that big. He's not fast, but he's not heavy, like he's not plodding around the ice. He can get to where he needs to get to. And with that reach of his, it's impossible to get around him. Then, yes, he does have that offensive capability. And you're right. When you look at numbers, almost always, these are guys that are probably playing anywhere from 13 to 16 minutes a game, if they're lucky. And he was one of those guys that played enough. Probably, maybe he could have scored more, but that wasn't necessarily his role. At JYP. So, that's not what they had other guys that kind of did that. And so, I think over time, as he gets into the North American game, I do agree the smaller ice surface suits his game better because he is able to get there. He can close more quickly, and there's not as much ice and ground to cover. So I do think that's important. The offensive side, even if it doesn't come, I think the defensive tactics that he has, the detail there, and his ability just to play a strong 2-way game is going to allow him to have a lot of success. There just aren't many 6'6" centers in the world, and maybe the foot speed, you wonder, can he do it at the NHL level? We'll see. I think that's still, but he's not a guy that I'm worried about in terms of his mobility, like I am with some other big players. I think he's got really good mobility. Yeah, so we'll see where he goes, but I'm excited. I got a chance to see him at the World Junior Summer Challenge before the season started, and he was a beast there. And then, as you mentioned, at the World Juniors, the little bit that he did play, he was a beast there too. So we'll have to see if maybe he gets another crack at it this summer at the Summer World Juniors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really remarkable player. Great growth from him.
Yeah, another guy who's shown those glimpses of eye-catching moments from the power forward position. The last one here, Kimun Kanaan, a little under the radar, fourth round draft pick from the Kings in 2019, but 14 points as a left-handed defenseman in Liga over in Finland as well. So a little bit of a two-way defenseman, but from your perspective, how does he suit into this Kings organization and what does he bring to the table?
Well, I think the road for him is a little tougher, just because of the fact that there are guys in the system that kind of do things similar to what he does. He does move pucks extremely well. I think one of the most impressive things last season, he really had his breakout year. 27 points in 54 games, and then he makes Finland at the World Championship. Big faith put in a young guy to make the senior team at that age. Then this year he's wearing a letter. He's got 14 points in 35 games. He is, moving the puck well. He likes to get in, can shoot from distance, but he can get in a little bit tighter than that as well, which I like. I really like. That's been a thing that I think more and more defensemen are getting better at now is getting off the blue line and coming down towards the tops of the faceoff circles a little bit more, finding that ice and using it. So I think that's going to be helpful to him. But overall, I mean, I think, he's not a big guy, but he's not a liability. He seems to have really good sense. He sees the game well. So he's not a guy that I think, he's not a sure thing. None of these guys are. Nobody ever is.
Yeah.
Even after you make it to the NHL. But he's had a lot of success in his career already. He's been at the World Juniors. He's been at the Worlds, as I mentioned. He's won an under 18 gold medal. So those guys, especially in the Finnish system, and the skill that they've been able to develop in the last couple of years, he's got a better chance. Now, he's not a guy that I spent a ton of time on this season, but certainly I've seen him a lot over the last few years at various international tournaments. And he always finds a way to stand out, and you're always looking at your list and saying, "Oh yeah, like that. There he is again." He's one of those kind of guys. So
sounds a little bit like Sean Dursey and Jordan
yeah,
Spence.
exactly. And I think that now they've got proof of concept that they can develop those kinds of players.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a bit of a crowd here for the offensive puck moving defensemen as they get moving, and Brent Clark, who we won't even end up touching on today, is kind of another one where he's in that mix too. So they got a lot of guys, and the Nusiainen, though, left shot, so a little different in terms of what he can offer on that front.
Yeah, well, no question, on the guys we touched, all welcomed into the organization. They bring a little bit different pieces individually. And hopefully, as you mentioned, with the development that the Kings have been able to show, we continue to see that with these guys as well. Chris Peters, NHL draft and prospect analyst for Daily Faceoff and Hockey Sense. Thanks for joining Tradin Jabs.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jabs. Great to be with you, bud.
Hey, you too.